Hello and welcome. My name is Kiraj, and I am the soon-to-be doctor behind the Doctor in Yellow channel, or just the dude behind the channel. I'm just a guy. I'm just here to connect with the tarot community and share any insights that I have, but also learn from the community too. I am a doctoral student in an education program. I am very, very passionate about education and learning. I believe that humans have an endless capacity to learn and grow, and that it is an imperative among humans to exercise that capacity and continually learn and grow for as long as we live. I feel that if people lived for a million years, we would be learning every single day of that million years. So it's important to me that any barriers or obstacles to someone getting an education, whether that's a formal academic education or just learning in life in general, need to be removed. And so that's my goal, is to promote accessibility of education, career-wise, that is. But aside from that, I'm also a tarot reader, I'm an astrologer, and I am here today to offer a VR to Simon with the Hermit's Cave, which is associated with the tag TarotTubers A to Z Evolution, which is a tag meant to acquaint the community with new TarotTubers. And this tag, I believe, is like 3 months old or so. But in my opinion, I don't think there's really, or there shouldn't be, a deadline or a cutoff date to be able to respond to a VR. I think you can do it at any time, and I want to take advantage of that. I am, as someone who wants to connect with the community, interested in having people get to know me and who I am. And I figured that this would be an excellent way to do that. So I'm really appreciative of this tag. Now, I can be a little long-winded, so I'm going to try to keep this as short as possible because it's 26 questions. If I can get this done within 45 minutes, I'd be shocked. So let's see if I can meet that goal and help you learn a little bit more about me during the process. So the first question, and each question is associated with the letter, thus the A to Z. So the A is, what sparked your spiritual or tarot awakening? Also, I have the questions printed out over here like an old man, so it is what it is. So if you see me looking over here, I'm looking at the questions. But again, A is, what sparked your spiritual or tarot awakening? So for me, I'll take the spiritual angle of that because it's all very much connected for me, and that started with astrology. So back in 2014, I was a high school English teacher, and it was a very demanding position, but a very rewarding one at the same time. And part of that position required me to mentor someone who ended up introducing me to astrology. And before then, I had never really explored astrology, anything metaphysical. And I was kind of like, okay, you can share what information you have about it with me, and I'll see if it's something that connects. But I wasn't really expecting it to be a transformative experience or anything like that. But to my surprise, as he and I spoke more about astrological concepts, I realized how much that resonated with me, and it made so much sense and connected with kind of my innate spirituality anyway, because I consider myself to have always been a spiritual person. But there was a point in time where I had kind of slowed my exploration of it. And so those conversations with him kind of helped reacquaint me with that spiritual side of myself, and astrology happened to be the channel through which that occurred. So I studied astrology, began studying that, and numerology followed very closely behind that. And so when tarot came into my life several years later, it felt like all of the pieces just immediately clicked, because in my mind, I was like, oh, this is just astrology and numerology combined and presented through various archetypes. That's how I felt, because you have the elemental associations, you have the astrological associations with many cards, and you have the numerological associations with the cards as well. So to me, it all naturally aligned and made it so that I took to tarot like a duck to water. Like it was very, very intuitive for me, given my background with astrology and numerology. So that's kind of how the spiritual awakening happened. It started with a chance pairing of kind of a mentor-mentee relationship, and my mentee just happened to be an astrologer, and everything proceeded from there. So that's how that awakening began. Now, the core beliefs, B, the second question is for beliefs. What core beliefs guide your practice today? I am very much about empowerment and forward movement. So, in my tarot practice, when I'm completing a reading for myself or for a client, my focus is on moving forward and gradually looking toward goals rather than kind of getting stuck in retrospectives. So I feel like looking at the past and taking stock of what has happened in our journey so far is helpful in a lot of different contexts. But I feel like overall forward movement should be the goal. And I feel like that forward movement is facilitated when there is empowerment behind it. So when someone feels personally empowered to take the steps to reach their goal, then that movement becomes much, much easier. So in my own tarot practice, I try to focus on that forward movement and not fixate too much on things that have already occurred, but see what I can do to guide myself closer to future goals so that I can maintain an optimism for the future. So that I would say is core to my practice as a tarot reader, and also continual learning and acquisition of wisdom. So it is my goal to share wisdom that I have and also gain wisdom from others because tarot is a process of learning. I don't believe you ever fully get to a point where you know everything about anything, really, but especially tarot. And to me, it's important that there always be a learning process involved in my practice. Now, C, cards. Which tarot or oracle deck do you feel most connected to right now? I actually have that deck here with me, and this is the Fortuna Tarot, specifically the Obsidian Occult edition. You can see it kind of is holographic on the front. This is by Maria Praena, and this is a deck that I love because it has introduced me to the concept of, not the concept of, but opening myself up to Pips index. And this is the deck itself. You can see it has these purple gilded edges. Here are the fronts, the cards, and the back as well. Very nice deck. So as you can see, this deck makes use of pips. And when I first began my tarot practice, I would say that pip cards weren't my go-to, almost to the point where I felt that if a deck made use of pips, it wasn't a deck that I would immediately gravitate to or give a second thought. But I feel like this deck does such a great job. And here's the Sun, my favorite major arcana. I wouldn't gravitate to it naturally before, but after exploring pips more and giving them a chance, I feel like they offer a lot of room to exercise numerological associations and your own interpretations independently of a scene, a pre-created scene. So I feel like it just opens up more room for someone to exercise their intuition and make use of their skills, in my case, in astrology and numerology, to achieve meaning, much in the same way that you would use a Marseille deck, for example. So I feel particularly connected to this deck because of its use of pips, but also it's just really pretty. And I think that's nice. But yeah, those are just a few cards there. Highly recommend it. Again, Maria Praena is the creator of this deck, and it is wonderful, so highly recommend it. Next question, D, for daily practice. Do you have a daily spiritual or tarot routine? I wouldn't say it's daily. I engage with the tarot whenever I feel compelled to. Sometimes that is every day, sometimes that is a couple times a week. And again, this is more for myself. With clients, it can be more often than that. But for myself, yeah, I wouldn't say it's necessarily every day. It's just whenever I feel called to it. But I notice that whenever I'd say a week goes by, I can feel it. I can feel the absence of it after a week for sure. So I try not to let more time than that pass before I make a concerted effort to sit down with myself and the tarot and really engage with my spiritual practice. Now, E, how has your practice evolved over time? One main way is one that I just shared, which is about using pips in my practice. I felt like when I first began my tarot journey, I felt like I would never use pips at all. I was like, oh, no way. Like Marseille, not using it, any pip deck, I'm never going to use it. But I actually am shocked that I came around on that because I thought I would never would. I was very adamant that I wouldn't use pip decks, but I have come to really appreciate them and really appreciate the way that it opens up my intuition. I think they're excellent. So that's a way that it has evolved over time. Also, another way has been in paying a lot more attention to the images on cards if I'm using a fully illustrated deck and where certain figures are in the images, what the scene communicates, how that lines up in a spread when you're looking at multiple cards at once, and really focusing on the images themselves. Because as someone who kind of takes an academic approach to a lot of things, it's very easy to get caught up in this is what this card means, and so I need to consider the meaning when deriving any sort of thoughtful insight from it. But over time, you realize that the meanings are just a component of the entire process. And you also need to take into consideration the various elements that are meaning making in totality. And the illustrations on the cards are absolutely one of those things. So I've noticed that I take that into consideration much more than I would have in years past. Now, my favorite deck. This is F for favorite. Your all-time favorite deck and why. So for me, that is the Earthbound Tarot. And this is the box for it. This is the Earthbound Tarot. And the creator of this deck is Celine Gordon. And I absolutely love it. I think that this is a fantastic deck. Here are the backs. And I'm going to show you a few cards from it. So this deck is heavily inspired by the American Southwest. The creator, Celine Gordon, is a New Mexico native. And in order to create this deck, she used a lot of earth pigments, which is what you're seeing. So she actually took pigments from the earth, ground them up, and used them in this watercolor style to create these images, which I think is an exceptionally creative way to go about deck creation. And I am someone who is from the American Southwest. So when I look at this deck and I see the imagery, which depicts a lot of geological formations that are commonly seen in the Southwest, it feels like home to me. It feels very familiar. It feels very comfortable. And I just love seeing these depictions. I know some of these may not be super clear, but I'm hoping you can get the gist of the design as I'm showing them. And yeah, it always feels nice to be able to connect with a sense of home, and that's what I feel with this deck. And as someone who believes the earth has life in it, seeing all of these depictions of the earth, especially knowing that these depictions were created using earth pigments, I just feel like it is the perfect deck for me. I really do love it. So when we talk about the concept of a soul deck, this would probably be mine. Again, the Earthbound Tarot by Celine Gordon. I think this is an incredible deck. Now the next question is guides, which is G. Do you work with spirit guides, ancestors, or higher self? All of the above. So, spirit guides, yes. Ancestors, yes. Higher self, yes. Spirit, which I consider to be the divine and the universe. I work with all of those energies in my tarot practice, and I feel like each distinct energy provides a helpful and comforting element to my spiritual practice. It makes the practice itself feel less solitary because I feel like for readers who read for themselves primarily, it can feel over time like a very individualistic practice. But when you start integrating energies like higher self, spirit, ancestors, or other spirit guides, it feels less individualistic and more connected. And I feel the tarot itself really speaks loudly to the idea of human connection and connection with the divine as well. So, yes, all of the above on those. H is for healing. How has tarot or spirituality supported your healing? I am so focused on healing and growth. It's really important to me in my tarot practice and spiritual practice as a whole. And I'd say the primary way that's happened is through shadow work. I know shadow work is not something that everybody enjoys because it can be uncomfortable to be in the shadow and look at yourself and understand why you behave the way you do, what elements of yourself are persistent, but maybe you're not particularly fond of and need to confront, or what you're challenging as a result of something that has happened in your past that is affecting the present. Shadow work can be tough, and tarot is my preferred means of delving into the shadow. And I'd say that's been the primary way that my healing has occurred. When I first approached shadow work, I didn't really think that I would gain a ton of insights. I was like, I'll try it, but who knows? Maybe I'll experience something transformative and maybe not. But I quickly discovered that it helps tremendously, at least for me. And so the shadow work component of my tarot practice has been the most restorative to me, the most healing, because I've been able to gain insights that I feel like I would not have gained otherwise. So shadow work for sure. Eyes for intuition. How do you connect with and trust your intuition? Honestly, this is something that I feel like I continually am working on, and that I think most readers are continually working on, is how to connect with your intuition and how to let your intuition flourish without being restrained. Because as I mentioned a little bit earlier, I'm a little bit of an academic, or a lot of an academic. And so I can approach the spiritual with kind of a critical mindset and perhaps more suppressive logic that eclipses intuition if I don't keep it under control. So I'd say the best way I connect with my intuition is by unleashing it from the more, I'd say, suppressive logic that I can impose onto it inadvertently, and kind of let that logic ease up a little bit. Not that I'm not thinking critically, but not letting critical thought and analysis and statistics and data get in the way of what should be a fluid practice. So just easing up on the gas a little bit, not being as scholarly about everything, not being as academic about everything, and letting spirit work through me and present messages that I can interpret without being encumbered by an obsession with data and statistics. So that's how I would say my relationship with intuition has flourished over time. J is for journey. Describe your tarot or spiritual journey so far. So a lot of this is connected to my awakening, how it started with astrology, and I continue to study astrology very much in depth. And I'd say that has characterized my journey. It is a very celestial experience for me. It started with the stars and with celestial bodies, with astrology, and has continued to be so. So as I've continued along my journey with the tarot, I've noticed that it remains very celestial. I'm always thinking about planetary associations, elemental associations as they relate to planets, and how astrological correspondences and connections can help me achieve deeper meanings in my readings and the readings that I provide to others as well. K is for knowledge. How do you learn and deepen your understanding of tarot? To me, the best way to do that is to connect with other people. As I mentioned earlier, tarot can sometimes be a very individualistic spiritual practice if you let it be that. But when you present yourself to the community, which is what I'm attempting to do through this channel, you are exposed to many different perspectives from other readers that are very healthy and insightful. There's so much wisdom to be gleaned in the community, and that's something that I want to continually remain a part of. So my learning and growth, of course, occurs through the insights that I gain in my individual practice, but I think seeing others' spiritual practice in the ways that they grow and what they have learned and what they have to teach is part of building a community level body of knowledge that you can then tap into to flourish. So I'd say connecting with others in the community is a big one for me when it comes to knowledge building. L is for lessons, a powerful lesson that tarot has taught you. And this ties into my nature of being very analytical, being very data driven, data minded. Um, the tarot has taught me to let some of that go sometimes. Not everything needs to be overanalyzed. Not everything needs to be pared down to a statistic. Not everything needs to yield a probability to then be dissected. Not everything needs to be deconstructed to its component parts and evaluated under a microscope. So it's taught me to let go of a little bit of that in order to free my faith in, and when I say faith, I mean specifically connection with spirit, and to free my inclination to tap into the spiritual side of myself and let that ascend. Because again, it's so hard for me not to overanalyze every single thing and ask, oh, I got, three major arcana in this three card reading. What's the probability of that happening? Or, this card came up with this card and that happened with this other question that I asked. So what's the chances of that? And over time, the statistics for that is related to like stuff like that is just not helpful when it comes to exercising the spiritual side of yourself. And that is a lesson the tarot has taught me. It's not saying don't be logical. It's saying don't let overanalysis hold down your spiritual side. So that is a very important lesson I've learned. M is for myth or misconception, a common myth about tarot that you like to debunk. This has more to do with tarot readers, and this is something that I continually strive to debunk because I feel that the perception of those who engage with metaphysical practices among the general population is that we are not using critical thought and therefore are more amenable to espousing metaphysical principles or ideals because we're not thinking critically enough. In other words, there can be this perception among the general population that anyone who is interested in metaphysical ideas is just not using their brain and they're not using enough thought, or else they wouldn't believe those things. That's something that I want to debunk, especially as it relates to the tarot community, because we are an intelligent group, highly, highly intelligent group. We think critically. We make sure that we're not being taken by emotion, that we're not being taken by belief to the point where we'll just be carried to the left or right, depending on what we believe and what we're seeing in the cards, or fooling ourselves into thinking that what we're seeing is something that doesn't need to be evaluated critically at all. So again, it's a very, very delicate balance between what I was mentioning earlier. You don't want to let overanalysis eclipse your spiritual side, but at the same time, you do want to have a little bit of it so that you can make sure you're not being carried to and fro by any emotion or whim or anything that you might see in a reading or whatever it may be. So again, the underlying principle here is that tarot readers are intelligence. We are using our minds, and it's because we're using our minds along with our spiritual inclinations that we've been able to derive so much value from our spiritual practice. So that's something that I want to debunk. We are an intelligent group and will continue to be so. N is for now. What is your current focus in your practice or life? So this is another one where the community is important. My focus is to connect with other members of the community to help, because I have already explored what individualism looks like in my tarot practice. And now I'm at a point where I want to share what I have learned with the community and be a member of that community in a very meaningful and thoughtful way. I want to go about it thoughtfully. I want to present positivity to the community. And that's something that I'm really focused on right now. So I know that sometimes those efforts can be a little bit slower. It takes time to get to know people, time to know what their spirituality is like. But with that time investment, there's so much that can be learned from everyone who's already here. And again, we're contributing to this collective body of knowledge that I think is incredibly important for the community as a whole. So that would be my now. Now on to the O question. I want to check. I'm doing somewhat okay with time, so we'll see how it goes. O is, do you use oracle cards? If so, how do they fit into your readings? I'm gonna be honest, I'm not an oracle guy. I know a lot of people like oracle cards. A lot of tarot readers are into them. Some have some amazing oracle collections along with their tarot collections. But I'm just not an oracle person. I mean, that's not to say that that won't change in the future. I just haven't found an oracle deck that I'm like, yes, I need to have that in my spiritual practice. And I've not felt compelled to use them along with tarot cards in my interpretations and meaning making. Again, not to say that won't change in the future, but at the moment I'm not super oracle oriented. So again, maybe that'll change, but for now I don't use them. P is purpose. What role does tarot play in your life purpose? Now, this is very much connected to what I mentioned at the outset, which is my goal as an educator to break down barriers to education and increase access to that for all groups. And tarot is very much related to that for me, because as I feel like I grow in knowledge and gain wisdom, I think a barrier to access as it concerns the community as a whole is simply not sharing it, is simply staying sequestered, keeping your practice to yourself, which is fine. You know, if someone wants to do that and they want to work individualistically, I think that's fine. There's nothing wrong with that at all. But for me personally, I feel like my relationship with the tarot is very much about sharing in the community as well. And so when it comes to my life purpose, which I feel is to dismantle barriers to education and to allow for continual learning and growth, I feel like a great way to do that is to share knowledge. And I feel like the two are very much connected in that regard. R is for, or excuse me, Q. Q is for question. What's your favorite question to ask the cards? And to me, it's less of a question and more of a request. The request is to have me see my emotions in front of me through the cards. So I'll ask to see my emotions as depicted in illustrations in the cards so that I can understand them a little bit better. I am a very emotional person, and there are astrological reasons for that. There are just life experience reasons for that. And I feel emotions very deeply and very strongly. And sometimes because of that strength and depth, it can be difficult for me to get a full understanding of what exactly am I feeling right now. It feels like I'm feeling a million different things, but I can't articulate any of them. I can't speak to any of them. Can I please just see them? And so that's what I'll ask the cards, is to please just show me my emotions so that I can see them before me and interpret them and understand them a little bit better. Seems like a weird request maybe, but it proves to be very helpful for me. So Pisces energy, what are you going to do? Um, Next question is R for ritual. Do you have any rituals before or after readings? I would say no, generally speaking. So for an everyday reading that I would perform, I wouldn't say I have any specific rituals associated with that. But I do have rituals that are associated with bringing a new deck into my collection, especially if it had a previous owner, or exiting a deck from my collection as well. And those rituals are aimed at showing appreciation for what a deck has taught me and what I've learned from working with it, or it has to do with honoring the energy of the reader that came before it. Things like that. So I'd say special circumstances like inviting a new deck, parting with a deck, or any other shift in my collection itself, I would say typically warrants a ritual from me. But on the day to day for reading, I'm not too ritualistic in that regard. Again, not to say that that's not something that won't change in the future, but as of right now, not too much. S is for spiritual tool. Besides tarot, what other spiritual tools do you use? In my opinion, I consider astrology to be a spiritual tool. I am very much engaged in the study of it, have been for a very long time now, and that to me helps me feel more connected to the divine. To me, it is very much a spiritual tool, very much the same way that tarot is a spiritual tool. So I use them in tandem, again, with numerology to really round out my spiritual practice. Everything is very much about the celestial for me. And so I am excited to keep that in my practice, and it will remain there for as far as I can see. T is for transformation. How has tarot transformed you? For me, that is a big question that I feel could be its own video. But to pare that down, I would say it's made me much more optimistic. Admittedly, I am someone who has fixated on negative things that are not helpful to fixate on at all. Someone who has looked at his future and not been able to see it, not been able to see anything good. And I have come from a place where I've been in very dark corners of my mind that make it difficult to be able to see anything good ever happening. And that was the place that I've been in for a long time during certain stretches of my life. The tarot has helped me maintain more optimism, develop more optimism, and be able to look at the future with a peace, knowing that it will be a refreshing future, a future where I'll be able to achieve my goals, where I'll be able to see the community that I want to be a part of and actually be a part of that, where I'll be able to see good things for myself, both personally and in my connections with others. So optimism, I think, has characterized the biggest way I've transformed because that is a pretty significant shift from the way that I used to operate. U is for unpopular opinion. An unpopular or unique opinion you have about tarot. I would say, and again, you're going to hear threads of the celestial and astrology through everything I have to say. And I don't know how unpopular this actually is. This is just my opinion. But I feel like the tarot and astrology are so connected that to have one without the other feels like two puzzle pieces that need to be together. I know there are a lot of readers who are not astrologers, so they don't pay attention to astrological correspondences at all, and I think that's fine. That's their tarot practice, and there's nothing wrong with that at all. And then, of course, you have astrologers who are not tarot readers. They're like, no, we have our system of divination. We don't need to incorporate another. But in my opinion, merging the two, and obviously there are a lot of astrological correspondences already there in the tarot, but intentionally merging the two within a spiritual practice, I think is such a great thing that can provide some really, really key insights. So again, I know that may be an unpopular opinion because in my experience, people tend to gravitate toward one or the other. but I feel like I walk more of a middle line with the two and really intentionally merging both tarot and astrology together. V is for values. What values are important to you as a reader? This comes back to empowerment for me, for myself and for others who I read for. Empowerment is key. As a result of receiving a reading, you should never feel disempowered. You should always leave a reading feeling as though you have the tools and the strength to bring about the reality that you want, the goals that you're looking to achieve, the personal development that you're looking to achieve. You should feel armed with everything you need to make that happen. I feel bad for individuals who engage with the tarot and leave a reading that they've done for themselves or that they've had done for them by someone else, feeling as though they're powerless to control what happens in their future and that they just need to let the future happen to them. So I'm all about empowerment. I believe everyone always has the tools that they need to achieve their goals, and tarot should amplify that feeling. Now, W is for wisdom, a piece of wisdom you've gained through the tarot. Again, this is one that warrants its own video because there are so many pieces of wisdom that the tarot has provided for me personally. But one that I feel has been particularly transformative to me has to do with looking inward and appreciating all aspects of a life, all portions of the life journey, and appreciating those past selves for what they have contributed to where we are currently. I did a video on this a few days ago where I talk about this very concept, which is honoring our past selves. And this is a piece of wisdom that the tarot has given me that has been truly transformative. Because in my case, I've had a tendency to want to impose my current way of being onto all past versions of myself, my teenage self, my 20s self, and so on, wishing that those versions of myself were the same way that I am now. It's like, oh, I wish that they knew the things that I know now. I wish that they were the way that I am now. And what that does is it dishonors those past selves and makes it so that we are devaluing, or at least I'll speak for myself, that I am devaluing the contributions those past selves made in order to get me to where I am now. The tarot has helped me to see how each past version of myself, how each past Kiraj has contributed to the Kiraj of today. And so that is a very valuable piece of wisdom that I plan to always take with me, because each season of life is there for a purpose, a very specific purpose. And just because we are where we are now and we've achieved growth and change doesn't mean we need to chastise or devalue past versions of ourselves for not being where we currently are. Now, X is for X Factor. What makes your tarot practice uniquely yours? I'm going to use this term, and I hope this makes sense as I say it, but my practice is very sun reverent. And what I mean by that isn't that I worship the sun, but the sun to me represents forward movement, optimism, and just a forward facing view. I look at the sun as being a celestial body that is unconcerned, an energy that is unconcerned with what it did yesterday and what it did the day before that. All the sun is concerned about is what it's doing today and what it's going to do tomorrow. And when you don't see it, it doesn't worry because it knows it's going to be back. That characterizes a lot of what I'm about at this part of my life and in my spiritual practice as well. I'm very sun reverent in the sense that I admire the way the sun doesn't look back. It just keeps moving forward, and it's not concerned about how well it warmed the earth yesterday. All it cares about is what it's doing today and then the next day. And when things are dark, it knows it'll be back. So I'd say that makes my tarot practice uniquely mine, is that it's very much guided by the sun and sun energy. Why is for you. How do you bring your authentic self into your practice? I'd say for me, that concerns making sure that I'm not overthinking. Um, my authentic self is always there, but the more I analyze and the more I overthink, the more that authenticity is diminished and aligns itself more with what I feel is expected in terms of the outcome of a tarot reading session or anything related. So I really bring my authentic self by not thinking too deeply about what I want to achieve in a specific session or reading for myself, because with clients it's very different. But for me, if I am so singularly focused on extracting information or an insight and have tunnel vision for that, sometimes that doesn't allow room to be my authentic self and just calm down and let what insights come to me simply come. And so overthinking can a lot of times get in the way. And I know that's not just me, that is a lot of people as well. So if you can connect with that, let me know. But kind of quieting down that, dogged singular focus and opening myself up to letting what happens happen. And that's how my spiritual practice maintains a lot of its fluidity. And Z finally is for Zenith. What would your highest expression or goal in tarot or spirituality look like? This to me would look like a consistent exchange of information between me and others. And as it relates to me specifically, that would look like being consulted, being approached to share wisdom, and me exchanging with such a person to glean wisdom from them as well. It really looks like a simple sit down conversation with someone about the tarot, about spirituality. And there is such an energetic exchange that both of our worlds are brightened as a result of that conversation. So it really looks like being approachable enough, and again, this is me speaking for myself, being approachable enough that individuals feel comfortable coming to me to glean insights that I have. And as a result of that interaction, they feel comfortable with me going to them for the same thing. So it's an exchange of energy back and forth. And I feel like it's important for me to make sure that I, again, am approachable enough for that to happen, because approachability removes a barrier to learning. And as I've mentioned, I'm all about removing barriers to education and learning. So that would be critical for me. And that is the A to Z. I hope that that was helpful. I tried to keep it, I don't think I met my 40 minute mark. What did I say? 40, 45 minutes? Either way, I don't think I met it, but that's fine. That's all good because these questions were very insightful. Hopefully for you, I know that they were for me and reflecting on them. And again, I'm very much looking forward to connecting with more members of the TarotTube community. And also for Simon specifically, I want to say thank you for this tag. I think it's fantastic. Hopefully you have the chance to see this. And thank you all if you've made it this far. And I hope you have a great day. Thanks so much.